What if I told you that the reason so many women stay silent in the bedroom has nothing to do with confidence and everything to do with the way most men move without even realizing they're doing it wrong? I know that sounds harsh, but after more than a decade sitting across from couples listening to their fears, frustrations, and the things they whisper only when the door is closed, I've learned a truth that most men never hear. Women rarely express what they truly feel during sex, not because they don't care, but because they don't want to hurt the man they love. And that silence becomes a quiet wedge between two people, building over months, even years, until intimacy starts to feel like a routine instead of a connection. I've seen it happen in my practice countless times. Men come in wondering why passion faded, while women admit privately that it wasn't desire that disappeared, it was the lack of the right kind of touch. But here's the part no one tells you, and the reason I'm speaking to you today: this isn't your fault. You were never taught how a woman's body actually works, where her real nerve pathways are, or why certain movements make her melt while others shut her down. No one explained that most of the pleasure-rich nerves aren't deep inside, but right at the entrance and around the clitoris, the places nearly every man overlooks. And once you understand this, once you finally see what her body has been trying to tell you all along, everything changes. You don't have to guess. You don't have to worry. You don't have to hope she's enjoying it. You'll know. So stay with me, because in the next moments, I'm going to show you the 5 techniques women consistently respond to. The same techniques I've watched transform relationships, revive chemistry, and turn quiet frustration into real connection. And if you've ever wondered what she's not saying out loud, this is the part she wishes you already knew. When I sit across from men in my office, I can almost predict the moment their eyes widen. It usually happens right after I explain something very simple, but rarely taught. Most of the nerve endings that create intense pleasure for a woman are not deep inside. They're at the entrance within the first 1 to 2 inches and around the clitoris, which isn't just a tiny button on the outside, but a complex internal structure with branches that wrap around the vaginal opening like a wishbone. And when I say this, men often blink at me as if I've just revealed a secret they were never supposed to hear. And honestly, that's exactly how it feels, like an uncovered truth that suddenly explains years of confusion, because so many men were taught directly or indirectly that deeper is better, that intensity is about penetration, that going harder and faster means doing a good job, But the science doesn't support that idea at all. In fact, according to a study published by the Journal of Sexual Medicine, fewer than 18% of women reach climax from penetration alone. The rest rely heavily on stimulation of the external and internal clitoral network, something most men never learn to work with. This misunderstanding creates a subtle fear in men, even if they never say it out loud. What if I'm not enough? I've heard variations of that fear hundreds of times from patients, men who genuinely want to satisfy their partners, but don't know how to navigate what no one ever explained to them. And that fear becomes even stronger when they realize their partners may have stayed quiet for years, not out of lack of love, but out of wanting to protect their feelings. But this is exactly where your advantage begins. Because once you understand the truth about female anatomy, where her most sensitive nerve pathways actually are, you stop aiming in the dark. You stop guessing in the dark. You stop thinking you need to push deeper when what she really wants is for you to master the places her body responds to the most. Think of it like learning how to play an instrument. If you press the wrong keys with force, the music won't sound better, it'll just be louder. But when you learn where the right keys are, even a gentle touch creates a completely different reaction. Her body works the same way precision creates fireworks. Force creates frustration. And here's where it gets even more interesting. Those nerve endings at the entrance, they're highly responsive to slow, controlled, intentional movement, not pounding, not racing, not pushing for depth. They react best when you treat them as the main event, not an afterthought. I've watched couples transform their entire intimate lives simply because the man learned this one principle: pleasure comes from the front, not the depth. And that realization changes the whole game, because now you know where her real sensitivity lives. But the question becomes, how do you use that knowledge in the very first moments of penetration to build attraction instead of losing it? That's where the next technique comes in, and it sets the tone for everything that follows. When men finally understand where a woman's real nerve sensitivity lives, there's always a second realization that hits them just as hard. Knowing where to touch her means nothing if you don't understand how her body wakes up. And that's why I always tell my patients the same thing: your first movements matter far more than you think. Because the truth is, a woman's body doesn't switch on like a light. It warms up like water in a kettle, slowly at first, almost quietly, and then suddenly everything reaches a point where sensation becomes sharper, deeper, and exponentially more powerful. And if there's one thing I've seen consistently across thousands of couples, it's this: when you rush the beginning, you silently shut down everything that could have happened later. Biologically, it makes perfect sense. During arousal, blood flow has to increase to the pelvic floor. The vaginal walls need time to relax and expand, and lubrication ramps up gradually, not instantly. Research published in the Archives of Sexual Behavior shows that most women need 12 to 20 minutes to reach full physiological arousal, yet most men start penetrating within the first 30 to 60 seconds. And when that happens, her body isn't ready to feel pleasure. It's busy trying to protect itself. This mismatch creates one of the biggest silent fears men carry. What if she's not responding because of me? But what I remind them is this: she's not resisting you. Her body is just asking for more time. Let me give you an image I often use with my patients. Imagine someone trying to run before their muscles have stretched. No matter how strong they are, they'll feel tight, restricted, maybe even a little pain. But once the muscles warm up, everything changes. The movement becomes smooth, powerful, and natural. A woman's body works the same way. Starting slow isn't about being gentle. It's about giving her nervous system the chance to light up the way it's designed to. And here's where the magic really begins. When you enter her for the first time and you don't rush, when you hold still for a moment, let her breathe around you, let her body adjust and wrap itself around the sensation, you activate her most sensitive nerve pathways without overwhelming them. Shallow, deliberate motion in those first few seconds doesn't just feel good, it sets the entire stage for the climax that may come later. Every patient I've seen who struggled with intimacy and then learned this technique came back with the same reaction: I had no idea. Something so simple could make her body respond that strongly. Because starting slow isn't weakness, it's strategy. It's the difference between building a fire with gasoline, which burns out fast, and building one with layered kindling, which grows hotter, brighter, and far more satisfying. And once you feel her response change, her breathing deepen, her hips tilt, her muscles soften instead of tense, you'll know her body is finally saying, I'm ready for more. That's the turning point. And the next steps are where most men either elevate her pleasure or unknowingly make it fade. Because once she's fully awakened, your advantage becomes something far more powerful, knowing when to give her exactly what she wants. and when to hold back to make her want it even more. And that's where the next technique takes everything to a different level. Once a woman's body is fully awakened, there's a moment you can almost feel that shift from warming up to wanting more. But here's where many men accidentally lose the momentum they just created. Because most men, once they find a rhythm that feels good, they stay in that exact rhythm for far too long. And the irony is that what starts as pleasure can quickly turn into numbness, not because she's losing interest, but because her nerves are adapting faster than you think. I've explained this to countless patients. The human nervous system is built to adjust to repeated patterns. It's called sensory adaptation, and it happens everywhere from the way your nose stops noticing a strong smell after a few minutes to the way your skin stops reacting to a steady temperature. The same thing happens during sex. When every movement feels identical, her nerve endings gradually fire less intensely, even if she likes what you're doing. And that's why variety is not just nice to have, it's essential if you want to keep her pleasure climbing instead of flattening out. Think of rhythm like ocean waves. If the waves were the exact same height, same speed, same direction, the ocean would feel strangely lifeless. But when the waves rise, fall, crash, soften, and change direction, that's when they feel alive, unpredictable, exciting. Her body reacts the same way. When you alternate between slow and deep, fast and shallow, pausing for a breath, then building again, you reawaken nerve pathways that were starting to settle. Her anticipation spikes, her body leans into the movement, and the pleasure resets with every shift. And the most fascinating part, and each small change doesn't just add sensation, it multiplies it. But there's a movement even more powerful than variety alone, one most men overlook completely, and it's the one that targets the structure responsible for the majority of female orgasms. That's where the next technique begins. Once men finally understand how variety keeps a woman's pleasure alive, the next question naturally comes, okay, but what movement actually gives her the strongest chance of reaching orgasm? And this is where I usually watch the entire room go quiet because the answer is almost never what men expect. In fact, it goes against everything they've seen in movies, everything they've been taught, and everything they assume women want. What I tell them is simple. The most powerful movement for most women isn't deep thrusting, it's grinding. And the reason is rooted deeply in anatomy, not opinion. Remember how I explained that the majority of her pleasure-rich nerve endings live near the entrance? Well, the clitoral network doesn't stop at the tiny part you see on the outside. It branches inside, wrapping along both sides of the vaginal opening like a wishbone. When your pelvis presses into hers and moves in circular rocking motions, not in and out, you're applying pressure directly to both the external clitoris and the internal branches at the same time. That dual stimulation is where the real electricity happens. I've had countless patients come back to me after trying this, surprised by how dramatically their partner's reactions changed. Women who had never climaxed from intercourse suddenly responded with more intensity. Men who struggled to last longer found they could stay in control more easily because grinding naturally reduces overstimulation for them. It's a movement that supports both partners, slow enough to hold your stamina, powerful enough to ignite hers. An easy way to picture this is to imagine drawing circles with your hips instead of pumping with your hips. Circles create pressure. Pressure awakens nerves. Those nerves send signals straight into the pathways connected to the clitoral system, the same system responsible for the majority of female orgasms. And the best part, grinding works in positions that feel intimate, connected, and emotionally safe. When bodies are close, pleasure becomes something shared, not performed. That closeness amplifies arousal in ways most men underestimate until they experience their partner's reaction firsthand. But even with the right technique, none of this reaches its full potential unless you develop the skill that separates an average lover from the kind of man she remembers the ability to read her body in real time. And that's exactly where the next idea takes us. What surprises men most after they learn about grinding and how powerful it is for the female nervous system is that even the best technique in the world can fall flat if they miss the most essential skill of all paying attention. Not the distracted, half-focused kind of attention, but the kind that lets you read a woman's body the way you would read a heartbeat on a monitor. And I say that as someone who has spent years listening to patients describe what they wish their partners understood without needing to speak. Because the truth is, a woman's body communicates constantly. Her breathing, the way her hips move, the subtle tension in her thighs, the way her hands pull you closer, or pause instinctively. Those signals are her real language. And the moment a man learns to listen to that language, everything changes. Pleasure stops being something he does to her and becomes something the two of them build together moment by moment. In fact, one study from the Kinsey Institute found that women are far more likely to reach orgasm when they feel their partner is responsive to their cues, not just physically, but emotionally. Responsiveness tells her nervous system, you're safe, you're understood, and this moment is about both of you. And when a woman feels safe, her body opens in ways that pure technique alone can never reproduce. I've watched this play out in countless relationships. Men who once struggled suddenly find their partners becoming more vocal, more engaged, more confident, simply because they started noticing the small things, the way her breathing shifts when something feels good, the tiny tilt of her hips when she wants more pressure, the soft stillness when something is too intense. These signals are subtle, but they're unmistakable once you train your attention to look for them. Think of it like learning to drive in the rain. The road doesn't speak, but if you watch the signs, the wet pavement, the reflections, the way the tires sound, you know exactly how much control you have. Her body gives you the same guidance if you're willing to look for it. But here's where the real power lies. When a woman feels truly seen, her pleasure doesn't just increase, it deepens. She stops holding back. She stops overthinking. She lets herself feel. And that's the moment men tell me everything suddenly feels different, more connected, more intense than anything they expected. And yet, even with perfect attention, there's one more layer. Most men never consider a factor completely outside the bedroom that silently shapes stamina, confidence, and performance. And if you ignore this part, every technique you've learned loses half its power. That's what we're about to uncover next. What most men don't realize until they're sitting in my office, frustrated and confused, is that even when they master every technique I've taught so far, their performance can still fall apart if their body isn't prepared to support them. And I've seen this pattern more times than I can count. Men blame their confidence, their technique, or even their partner when the real problem is something far simpler and far more fixable, their physical health. Because sexual performance isn't just an act. It's a cardiovascular event. It depends on blood flow, hormone balance, and stamina in exactly the same way a good workout does. And when these systems aren't functioning well, no amount of technique can compensate. I tell my patients all the time, you can't build a skyscraper on a shaky foundation, and you can't sustain intimacy on a body that's constantly running on empty. Let's start with blood flow, the core of everything. An erection is literally just blood being trapped under pressure. When circulation is weak, firmness weakens. When circulation is strong, everything else becomes easier. Control, sensitivity, stamina, confidence. It's the difference between trying to inflate a tire with a weak pump versus a powerful one. And according to the Cleveland Clinic, issues with sexual performance are often the very first warning signs of poor vascular health. Then there's testosterone, not the stereotype of manliness, but a hormone that regulates energy, desire, and mental focus. I've seen man after man regain not just performance, but motivation, clarity, and even their sense of self once their levels improved naturally through sleep, nutrition, and physical activity. And here's the part: men rarely expect small lifestyle habits make a massive difference. Hydration, daily movement, foods that boost nitric oxide like beets and leafy greens, reducing alcohol, restoring sleep cycles. Every one of these changes supports the nervous system, the cardiovascular system, and the hormonal balance needed for intimacy to feel effortless instead of stressful. When men address these things, I see their entire body language change. They walk into the room with confidence instead of worry. Their partners notice the difference long before they say anything out loud. And the techniques we've discussed, slow entry, teasing, variety, grinding attention, all become exponentially more effective once the body behind them is strong. But even with good health and great technique, there's one final shift that transforms intimacy from something physical into something unforgettable. And it's the emotional layer most men never think about until it's too late. That's exactly what we're going to unlock next. By the time men understand how much their physical health influences performance, there's one final realization that pulls everything together. And it's the part most men never see coming. Because even with perfect technique and a strong, healthy body, there's a deeper layer that silently controls how intensely a woman experiences pleasure, her emotional sense of safety. And when I say safety, I don't mean dramatic vulnerability or long conversations about feelings. I'm talking about the subtle, quiet signals that tell her nervous system, you can relax here. This matters because biologically, arousal and relaxation are inseparable for women. When stress levels rise, oxytocin drops, pelvic muscles tighten, and pleasure becomes harder to reach. But when she feels understood and valued, her entire body opens, literally and neurologically, to levels of sensation that technique alone could never create. I've seen this pattern in my clinic more times than I can count. Women who struggled for years suddenly experience intense climaxes after their partner made one simple shift: being present. Not perfect, not performative, just genuinely present, listening, responding, noticing. That presence triggers an emotional release that amplifies physical pleasure by a factor most men underestimate. Think of it like this: her body is a lock and technique is the key. But emotional safety is the hand that steadies the key so it can actually turn. Without it, you can twist and still feel stuck. With it, everything slides effortlessly into place. This is why small moments matter: the way you look at her, the way you slow down. When her body tenses, the way you follow her breath instead of fighting it. To a man, these may seem subtle. To a woman, they're the difference between holding back and letting go completely. And when she lets go fully, deeply, without fear, that's when intimacy becomes something far more powerful than pleasure alone. That's when it becomes connection. But now that we've uncovered all 7 layers, from anatomy to pacing to teasing to variety to grinding to attention to emotional presence, there's one final step left: weaving everything together into a seamless, unforgettable experience. And that's exactly where the conclusion takes us. As we come to the end of this conversation, I want you to remember one thing. Nothing I've shared with you today is about perfection. It's about understanding her body, understanding her signals, and understanding your own strength as a partner. Every man who has transformed his intimate life didn't do it through talent or luck. He did it through awareness, patience, and the willingness to show up with intention. And if there's one message I hope stays with you long after this video ends, it's this: you are not powerless. You are not in the dark. You now have the knowledge that so many men never receive, knowledge that can deepen connection, rebuild trust, and create pleasure that doesn't fade but grows. Your effort matters. Your presence matters. And every small improvement you make will be felt more deeply than you realize. Take care of your body, pay attention to your partner, and give yourself permission to learn, not because you're doing something wrong, but because you deserve to feel confident, capable, and in control of your intimate life. If this video gave you clarity, comfort, or even just one insight you didn't know before, I want you to do two things. First, save this video so you can come back to it anytime you need a reminder or want to revisit one of the techniques. And second, subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications so you never miss the next piece of medical guidance I share, especially if you want to protect your performance, your hormones, and your long-term sexual health as you age. I release new science-backed insights every week, and I want you to have all the tools you need to stay strong and confident. Before you go, I'd love to hear from you. Which part of today's explanation surprised you the most? Tell me in the comments your questions. Guide the next videos I make. Take care of yourself, take care of your health, and I'll see you in the next session.